Hey friends, before we get started with today's episode, I wanted to let you know that I have just a few spots left for the two dreamy trips to France this September. So first we've got Paris and Versailles, which is for couples, and that is September 14th through the 19th. We are going to be in Versailles with Molly doing a private pastry class from her apartment. We are going to spend 2 fabulous nights in Versailles because I love that little city. It's beautiful and stunning. You will love it too. Then we will be off to Paris and we have a walking tour with Claudine Hemingway. We have a market tour and cooking class with Veronique with Cuisine Elegante. We'll be making an amazing multi-course lunch while drinking champagne and be in her beautiful Parisian apartment. We are going to be pickers for the day. We're going to Champagne with Cindy Couteau and going to this beautiful small champagne producer, family run, woman-led. She's 10th generation. Her name is Christine. I cannot pronounce the name of the champagne house, so I'm not even going to hurt your ears by trying, but you will love it. It's going to be amazing. Then the next trip is in the Charente-Maritime, and it's just a day later. And we will be starting in Bordeaux and then having a fabulous lunch at the Intercontinental Hotel before we head off to the Charente-Maritime region to check into our gorgeous chateau that we have rented the entire property. It's on a 75-acre park. It's unbelievable. My friend Jeff is going to be our private chef, so he'll be providing all of the dinners that we take at the chateau. We're going to visit Ile de Ré. We're going on a river cruise. We are going to make beautiful silver jewelry at this woman's chateau that she purchased recently. And we're going to do a private tour and tasting at Citadel Gin, my favorite. So much goodness, so much beauty, so much time to relax, so much time to engage and discover, so much time to shop for your own property in France if you are so inclined. We'll have lots of conversations with expats that have done just that. It's so dreamy. If you can't decide, you don't have to. You can come to both, like some of my clients are doing. But I just wanted you to know about those two things: Paris and Versailles, September 14th through the 19th, the Charente-Maritime, September 20th to the 26th. The link is in the show notes. Save your spot today. I cannot wait to play with you in France. Hi, friends. This is Wendy Harrop, and welcome to the Say Yes to Yourself podcast. On the Say Yes to Yourself podcast, you'll hear stories from women just like us who are adding the practice of saying yes in their daily lives in big and small ways, and as a result are experiencing the truth that everybody wins when you say yes to yourself. Saying yes to yourself is a graceful unfolding, an intentional becoming of the very best version of you. It is my hope that in these conversations, we are able to find our truth and be inspired and empowered to live our very best lives. I'm so excited to go on this journey with you, and I look forward to finding a bit of our own story in each other's. Hey friends, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. I know I say it all the time, but I love these conversations, and today's conversation was no exception. This woman is really wonderful. She is doing amazing, big, important work in the world. And I do want to give a heads up. We are talking about domestic violence and survivors of that. And if that is at all a conversation that you're not available for, then I encourage you to skip this episode. If this is a conversation that you would like some more information about how you can help and be available for people in your circle that might need this, then I invite you to stay. I also think that, I mean, nothing is graphic or it's just disturbing as a whole concept, but it is the decisions that are necessary for a woman to stand up and say, I want more, and I'm not available to continue the way that I've been living. She is bold, she is courageous, she is brave, she is a freaking queen, and we are here for her, and we are her in so many different areas. So that is why I really enjoyed this conversation with Johanna Crawford. She, for the past 50 years, has dedicated herself to community service in a wide variety of areas and organizations. She's based in Massachusetts, so a lot of her work has been in the Boston and Cambridge areas. And in 2004, harnessing her vast experience, she founded Web of Benefit at age 58. There, she personally worked with over 2,200 survivors of domestic violence in Boston and Chicago, plus 26 states, helping them define and realize their goals and dreams. As a capstone to the grant-giving program, Jo designed the Pay It Forward program. With this good works agreement, each survivor helped 3 other survivors, increasing exponentially the lives touched through WOB to more than 10,000 women and children. Johanna has been a guest speaker at Babson College, Simmons College, Harvard University, and the University of Massachusetts. At the Japanese Women's Leadership Initiative in Tokyo, she taught Japanese women about grassroots social entrepreneurship, risk-taking, and creating a nonprofit organization. In 2010, Ms. Crawford was awarded the Be the Change Award by the Massachusetts Conference for Women. In June 2011, she and Web of Benefit won the Award for Excellence in Collaboration given by the statewide Massachusetts Nonprofit Network. She is an AARP Purpose Prize Fellow, and in July 2012, she was honored as a CNN Hero. She did not stop there. She has written an amazing book called It Takes a Woman to Empower Women. She is a force, and she is with us today to share the tenets of her work and of what she wants to empower all women to do, and that is dream, which of course means she is talking to the right group of people. So please do your chores, do your walk, do your drive, do whatever you're doing while also listening to this inspiring conversation with Johanna Crawford. Jo, I am so thrilled to have you here. And I have already decided that this is one of my favorite conversations. And we have not ever had one of those at any length, but everything that I have read about you and know about you, even just the domain name on your email address, just makes me know that I want to hear everything that falls out of your mouth. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And the whole concept of your podcast is one of the main concepts of what I created my nonprofit around. and also what I wrote my book, It Takes a Woman to Empower Women, about. So I am really happy to be here.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love when you make a new connection with somebody you clearly have been tethered to your whole life. You just hadn't found each other yet. So I'm really thrilled to just glean from your wisdom, hear the trajectory of your nonprofit work, how that is transitioning, how it has turned into a book, all of the things that are really just in your heart to share with this beautiful community that has eager ears and are in their era of yes. They are fully committed to their expansion, and they and I are right here in this moment with you by divine appointment, and we are here for it.
Well, thank you so much. Let me start by saying that I started working with survivors of domestic violence in 2002. I don't call it domestic violence anymore. And I did not come up with this phrase, and I can't tell you who did, but I call it intimate terrorism.
Oh gosh, wait a
Because
minute.
it
I have to
is,
stop right there for 1 second. That is exactly what it is.
it is.
And domestic violence is such a little sweet
I
cotton
know,
ball of a band-aid that means, oh, you're just making it up. It can't
right,
be that bad. It's in
right,
your beautiful house.
right.
Oh, okay. See, I love you already. Go ahead.
So, so the intimate terrorism part is that even without uh, current physical abuse or emotional, and the emotional and the physical um, don't heal as well as a broken bone. So even without that, um, we live in terror with those we are most intimate with. And also, I'll put another little caveat here. Um, in my book, even the cover says we are all survivors. And I'm not talking about intimate terrorism.
Right.
I'm talking about abuse as a spectrum.
Mm.
On the low end, we're talking about microaggressions. We're talking about gaslighting, which to me is sick and horrible and nasty,
Yes. Yep.
all the way to homicide.
Mm-hmm.
So Gloria Steinem is one of my heroes. And I think a lot of younger women don't know too much about Gloria Steinem, but she really was the first great feminist
Yes.
in my era. I think she's now 90, but she's such a cool lady.
Mm-hmm.
There are two quotes that well, several of quotes of hers in my book, but two that I love the best is we don't live in a patriarchy. The patriarchy lives in us.
Oh man.
And it is systemic. We're born into it from second one. And then you add the isms, the sexism, the racism, the anti-Semitism. And then you add the fact that men are taking away the rights over our bodies. So we not only have all been abused, we are now being abused as well.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we do about that? Right? And as you speak about it, self-care is huge. So let's just go back to the beginning for a minute. I started a nonprofit after having worked in an emergency shelter for 2 years, and realized that there was a gap for survivors. Never call them victims. They are not. These women are survivors. There are victims from domestic violence, and they're the ones who do not take responsibility for their lives. I did not work with those ladies. They had to find something else somewhere else. So I worked with survivors who had been out of the abuse for at least 6 months and ready to create a new life. So my nonprofit, which I started from zero and knew nothing about nonprofits, raised over $1.5 million
Wow.
and gave over $1.2 million to 2,200 survivors.
Amazing.
And when I started working with the survivors, I knew that they had to be able to figure out what they wanted to do for the rest of their lives, because they had to totally start new lives. They had escaped the old one, but now what do I do?
Right.
So I created a nonprofit to empower women financially, to break the intergenerational cycle of intimate terrorism, and create new lives for themselves and their children. So I have about 2,200 great stories, but a lot
Yes,
of
you
which are in
do.
the book. And 5 of the stories in the book were written by survivors
Mm,
themselves who had gotten grants from us. So I knew these women had to have a way to think about what their best life might look like.
sure.
And I knew if I called it a life plan, I'd scare the hell out of everybody. It would scare the hell out of me if somebody said we're sitting down to write a life plan.
Right. I'm only now getting comfortable with those words because I'm in the second half of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm like in the third quarter. So, but anyway. So anyway, believing in divine guidance,
Yes.
when I was creating the nonprofit, and you have to understand, I knew nothing about anything, had no money, no nothing. I would go to bed at night and say, okay, God, you tell me what's next, you know? So first of all,
That's a lot more than nothing.
I
Turns out.
had to come up with a name for the organization. And I woke up one morning and in my head was Web of Benefit. And I'm like, that is a really weird name, but it's a web of women helping women.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was the
Love
name.
it.
You can look it up. It doesn't exist anymore, but it did. And then I said, okay, what am I going to call this life plan? And wake up the next morning, dream proposal. So that's what it is.
I love it.
So we did the dream proposal. And if any of your listeners want to take a second to get a blank piece of paper and a pencil, we'll do a quickie right now.
They do, and I'm doing it too.
Okay.
Okay.
So in order to do the dream proposal, there are 2 very important beliefs. You have to believe that you deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about that a little later. And you have to believe you have the power to create it.
Yes.
But as you know, intention is everything.
Yes.
So we're going to write this down and we're going to put it on your refrigerator door so you can look at it all the time. So how I did this was I had the survivor's advocate and the survivor together, and the 3 of us did this together. So anyway, there are 3 parts. We'll start with part 1. And I have a question to ask you and ask all your listeners.
Yes.
Has anybody ever asked you what your biggest dream is?
Yes, they have. And all my listeners know that they have too. It's my favorite question.
Well, nobody had ever asked me, so you're a lucky girl. So anyway, we're talking about what is your biggest dream is number 1. This has 5 parts.
Okay.
The first part is what is your dream career?
Mm-hmm.
I worked with a lot of non-English speaking women.
Okay.
One woman I remember specifically was from Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
So she spoke Portuguese and we had a translator. And it's really hard doing a dream proposal with a translator, but it happens. So she had finished 5th grade in Brazil. And she wanted more than anything in the world to be a doctor.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So number 1, under biggest dream is career. She wrote doctor.
Awesome.
Okay. Number 2 is what does your dream house look like?
Okay.
Okay. You might already have your dream house, but there must be some stuff that you can add to it.
Oh, I have more dream houses.
And then we would design the house.
Oh, fun.
I mean, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms,
Right.
where was it? What does the yard look like? Do you have a pool? So dream house. The second is, what is your dream car? Because I'm a crazy car person.
So fun.
And we deserve the best cars, the most wonderful cars, if we want.
Mhm.
But I did have this rule because a lot of these ladies had, actually, the average was 2.3 children because we kept
Mhm.
really good statistics. But some of them had 3 and 4 kids and they wanted a minivan. I said, no, 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 no. We don't do minivans. No,
Practical and
no,
dreams
no,
do
no, no.
not go
That's not the
together.
dream. So let's see. We have career, we have house, we have car, dream travel. Where do
Mhm.
you want to go? What do you want to learn? I've been very lucky to be able to travel a lot. I hope to do a lot more. So those four, I had probably, I ran the nonprofit for 12 years. Those four I probably had right off the bat. But truly, it took me 5 years to come up with the fifth, which
Mm.
is self care.
Mm.
Because these women
Mhm.
had no time
Mhm.
to take a bath
Right.
or read a magazine.
Right.
So self care became number five under biggest dream.
Mm.
Okay, so that's question number one. And you're going to fill in those blanks for yourself. Question two is, what are the steps and the goals?
Okay.
So, as I mentioned, the step and goal for the Brazilian lady was her dream was to become a doctor. So, okay, we don't speak English and we have a fifth grade education. What the hell do we do?
Yeah.
Well, A, we go to free English classes, which we can
Mhm.
find anywhere. And B, we do a free GED. Okay. So those are both free, but we need transportation to get to the class and we need a computer to do the GED.
Sure.
Herein lies me.
Got it.
So, anyway, we did that for her.
Which I love that you weren't just throwing money
Oh no,
at a general.
they never touched a penny.
Right. But it wasn't, even if they did, but it wasn't at something general, like here's,
No,
you
no, no,
know, 20
no.
grand, get your life back together. But it was so drilled down. That's
Right,
beautiful.
right. So then the steps and goals continue down. Obviously, they're not going to buy a McMansion tomorrow, but
Right.
the step and goal would be, okay, how do we get an apartment or how do we get more stable living?
Hmm.
So we worked all the way through all of that. And then we got the third question is for the women, it was what was the cost of the first step? But for
Mm.
you all, it is what is the first step I can take tomorrow?
Hmm.
Because I believe if you take the first step,
Yeah,
the second step will show itself.
that's right.
I had another woman, a Korean woman who didn't speak English, who was a tailor, and her husband had taken the sewing machine and left. So maybe she could have worked as a dishwasher in the basement of a Korean restaurant, but nowhere else. So her advocate, who was a Korean lady herself, who I grew to know and love in Chicago, they had found a sewing machine for $700. So I wrote the check to the guy for the sewing machine. It came with a lot of other gobbledygook that she needed. And I went to visit her a couple years later. Actually, um, I was lucky enough to be a CNN hero in 2012. And
Amazing.
if you Google Johanna Crawford CNN hero, there's a very short, I think it's a 3-minute clip, but we went to visit her in her
Mm.
tailor shop and she was negotiating to buy the building.
I love it. That's amazing.
$700.
Money well
So
spent.
that is the power, not even of the money.
Hmm.
It's the power of the worthiness and the belief in the dream.
Right.
So when I was working with these women, the learning curve was really steep because I knew nothing about nothing. I did know a bit about intimate terrorism, having lived with it, but
I'm sorry to hear that.
I think most of us in the field
Yep.
have a story, and
For
that
sure.
story is what made me who I am today.
Mhm.
So um,
And you
so that's
can't
fine.
help somebody get somewhere if you don't know the directions. You don't know how to do it. Like
Absolutely, absolutely.
that's what makes any of those experiences not worth it, but you can change the end of the story by helping
Right,
somebody else.
right. So as I said, knowing nothing about nothing, I knew that I'd be working with women's self-esteem,
Mhm.
but what I discovered was it was self-worth, which is the
Right,
basis of
right,
self-esteem.
right.
But then what I learned even later on, and truly, if anything comes out of this podcast for your listeners, it's that I found the basis for everything is self-forgiveness.
Mm,
And I don't mean forgiving yourself for something that you did to somebody 20 years ago or something you said to your neighbor. I am talking about a blanket overall self-forgiveness for everything you have or will ever do or say. Because we, as even very young children, are blamed, or my mother used to say to me, "Can't you say something nice?"
mm,
And and then she'd say, "Can't you be nice?" And I'm like, "Oh, that must mean I'm really not nice." Well,
mhm,
after decades of therapy and spiritual work, all that was crap.
mhm.
But one sentence,
Yep,
truly,
yep,
one
it's true.
sentence. And what parent is perfect? What
Right.
parent, and I'm not blaming it on parents. I'm a parent and grandparent. I'm probably screwed many people up. But we say things
Mhm.
without meaning them, just
Right.
coming out. And so anyway, self-forgiveness is really a big deal.
Yeah.
And I think self-forgiveness is the basis of self-care. It's the biggest and most important self-care that we can do.
I love that.
And it takes a really, really long time and a really lot of hard work. But if we understand that to be human is to be imperfect, and that we are always trying to do the best that we can do with the tools that we have,
That's right.
self-forgiveness becomes easier.
Mhm.
And it is probably a lifetime mission, but it does get easier with age.
That's beautiful. And I love that the way that you've been able just to kind of unpack and get to the root of that, because there's such a big difference between self-confidence and self-worth. There's there's a lot of shadowy stuff in there, and there's a lot of, like you said, the sentences that we lived with and
Right,
lived in and filtered as young children that have just been playing on a tape over and over, that have become our reality. And we
right,
know a belief is just a thought you keep thinking.
right,
So you can shift this belief, but it begins with a shift in your thoughts, which helps by shifting your words and being very careful in your word choice. The work that I've been doing over the past 4.5 years, it takes me a long time to have a conversation because
mm,
I'm being really careful with
right,
the words that I choose, because my brain is listening and my heart is listening. And
right,
now my 10-year-old is listening. So
right,
I want to be really mindful, really intentional of what I say out loud, but really intentional about what I say on the inside.
right. Well, the beliefs that we have from childhood all the way through, which are called core beliefs, um, I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not smart enough. Nobody
I'm
loves me.
selfish.
I'm not lovable. All those core beliefs. I don't deserve it. Blah, blah, blah. All those core beliefs create behavior patterns,
Mhm.
right? So I'm not good enough, so I'm not going to try. Or I don't deserve it, so I'll just stick with what I got.
Mhm.
No? So and they're very sticky. Those core beliefs are
Yes, they
very
are.
sticky. And they're familiar.
Mhm.
And the self-talk going around in our head is familiar. And so instead of that, when I speak about self-care in my book, I talk about the lovable little child within.
Hmm.
So, I'm not a 35-year-old woman who's been abused for 10 years and has 3 kids to take care of and no means of support. And I don't deserve anything. And it was all my fault. Of course, most women believe everything is their fault, right? Which is
Mhm.
another awful core belief.
That's why we have
So
a
that's why we end up
podcast.
apologizing all the time. But anyway,
Right.
so there is a wonderful, lovable little child in that 35-year-old woman who needs to be loved and taken care of.
Yeah.
And how do we get from I'm a rotten, horrible person and it's all my fault to how do we take care of that little Joe or how do we take care of that little Wendy?
Mhm.
And that is, that's what I love about you saying yes to yourself. It's that little child that she's 5 and she wants to come out and play. So, yeah,
Yes, she does.
that's what we need to do. But
Absolutely.
it's hard work and it's long work.
Yes, they are underused muscles. And
That's what you
it,
said. Yes,
right.
it is
And it
muscles.
it is uncomfortable, it's unfamiliar, but it's safe and it is the appropriate trajectory of what's next.
Right.
And we can do hard things.
Yeah. Oh, I meant to tell you the second, um, the second really wonderful quote, and you can edit it out if it's
Nope,
inappropriate. But
do it.
from Gloria Steinem is when they call me bitch, I say thank you.
Mm. And what do you think she meant by that?
Well, first of all, it's sticking up for your rights
That's right.
and saying no.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, if we set boundaries or stick up for ourselves, they call us bitch. And
That's right.
I have to agree with her
Yep.
anytime, any place. And I will say thank you. So,
That's amazing. That's a
yeah.
mic drop. I love it.
Gloria, by the way, has a book out. It's a short little book of nothing but her quotations.
Oh my gosh,
I
that's
don't know
brilliant.
I don't know the title of the book, but I'm sure if you Google
We'll link
Gloria
it in the show
Steinem
notes for sure.
quotation book, it is fabulous.
I'm certain. I'm certain she's a queen. Tell me, please, how you transitioned out of this beautiful nonprofit that you were running and how that was transformed into a book, which is actually now has the capacity to help far more women than you were able to help physically with your
Right.
nonprofit.
Well, I'm a bit of a late bloomer. I didn't
You are
I
among
didn't
great company.
good. I didn't start the nonprofit till I was like 58.
Love it.
After I had been working at the crisis shelter. Um, so as I said, we gave 2,200 grants. And when I turned 70, I wanted to retire. And I loved working with the women one-on-one, but the fundraising was just hell for me, asking people for money. And I know there are people who are wonderful at fundraising and love it, but it was hateful. And
Mhm.
honest to God, if somebody gave me $5 million today, I would
Mhm.
go out and do exactly the same thing and start giving money again and not have to worry about anything. But
Right.
that dream didn't come true. So anyway, we were really quite well known in Boston, and we had won some really big awards. And I worked with every agency basically in the city who help women. And I started a search committee to see if we could merge with somebody so Web of
Mm.
Benefit would continue. And we looked at a lot of different places that were interested in taking us over. But I had done something at the beginning of the forming of the nonprofit, and it turned out to be really smarter than I knew. I decided I was never going to take any public money. So I never
Mm.
took any state or federal money
Okay.
because I don't do well with people telling me what to do. I
I,
didn't
I
as
gather that about
a
you.
5-year-old. I didn't play well in the sandbox. So we only did private money, and like Procter and Gamble, some corporations gave us money, and a lot of very generous private foundations, because we truly were, and I think probably still are, a unique way of doing things.
Yes.
So anyway, because I hadn't taken any public money, I could and often had to give grants in an hour
Sure.
to save an apartment,
Right.
to get somebody the hell out of town
Right.
because their abuser had gotten out of prison. And none of the agencies that were looking to take us over were private. They were all taking
Mm.
federal and state money. So they couldn't even do what we did.
Right.
And probably from an ego base, I didn't want it to be something that it wasn't.
Yeah.
So, and trust me, dissolving a nonprofit is not as easy as it sounds.
I believe it.
It has to be done through auditors and accountants, and giving every last penny away, which of course I wanted to do. And I did a really fun thing with that. I think I had $3,000 left over after all the expenses were paid. And I had been working with an agency in Boston for trafficked women who also had been abused. So they fit the prerequisite. And I set them up with an entire computer lab for
Oh,
$3,000.
beautiful.
Yeah, so I spent every penny was like for paper or ink or
Right.
whatever. So that's how it dissolved
Okay.
and didn't get taken over. But I had started, that was in 2016. I had started thinking about and doing research on the book probably in 2014 or 2015.
Okay.
And then I started doing other stuff, and it got delayed. And writing is really hard.
That's what I understand. Everyone says, "Oh, you should write a book. You should write a book." And every person that I've talked to that's written a book has said, "Oh my gosh, it's so hard."
And I had really good research. I had phenomenal stories
Sure.
and quotations from all the women we had given. So the basis was there.
Right.
It was getting it into the right format and writing around the edges. And then I finally got a wonderful writing coach.
Oh,
And if
good.
anybody needs a writing coach, they can contact me.
Perfect.
But she kept me on the straight and narrow, and we got it done. And then a phenomenal editor, just because of the divine plan and divine assistance, the right person showed up at the
Yeah.
right time, which I
Beautiful.
believe for any and all of you will happen as well, because
I
I'm nothing
agree.
special. I just
You're
blunder
super
through.
special, and so are
Well,
we.
I blunder through with the best of them. So anyway, lo and behold, about a year ago, not quite a year ago, last like August, it was in a physical form. So it can be found just about anywhere. And the title is It Takes a Woman to Empower Women.
I love it.
Oh, and the fun part is there's self-care at the end of each chapter.
Perfect.
There are affirmations. There are journal ideas, and there's something that I call wise words.
Hmm.
They're terrific quotations, mostly from women, but some from great men like Gandhi,
Yeah.
sprinkled throughout the entire book.
Now, I have a question. You say there's some self-care tips or suggestions at the end of each chapter. And I know that that's a phrase that is very popular. And I think saying yes is a form of self-care. And I think that I, similarly to the word introvert, which have a fair grasp on the English language and know what that means. I have no idea what it means to be one because I am not. Amelia, my daughter, is introverted, and I have to stop sometimes midway in too many words to her and look at the notes that my coach gave me about introverted people and how they need space and need rest. So I'm needing a cheat sheet for how to interact with this concept that is obviously true in her experience, but it's foreign to me. And many practices of self-care are equally foreign to me because I am learning that doing things for other people and having joy out of that, that's not always the only thing that can check the self-care box. When I say, oh, giving is how I receive, like, oh, well, that is a product of some conditioning, ma'am. So
Right.
I am learning this. I am exercising this underused muscle. I think I am excelling in a lot of areas in this by how many weeks a year I spend in France. But I'm really enjoying the discovery of so many different practices and avenues that are ways to give care, transformative care to ourselves when we are seemingly the only beneficiary of that practice, which of course it has ripple effects on everybody else. But all to say, I'm eager to hear what practices you're suggesting and how these are woven through the beautiful pages of your book, because more people, me at the top of the list, need to incorporate more of these things so that we are fueled to do this good work that is in our hearts.
Right. What I write and believe is that we as women have been taught to do more and be less. How many times have we all dumbed down to make somebody else look smarter, better, whatever? So again, with self-care, as with everything, you got to start with self-forgiveness. And then you got to start with the belief that you deserve self-care and that that inner child needs to be taken care of. Can I read you just a page from the book?
Would you please? I would love that.
Okay. So this is page 36 of the book, chapter 2. The title is Invitation to Self-Care and Healing. There's a quote by Brene Brown. You must know Brene. It's called Embrace Your Imperfection. Self-care and the neglected child within. Leila Delia, a trauma-informed wellness educator, asserts that, quote, self-care is how you take your power back, unquote. Self-care begins with self-forgiveness and self-love and is accomplished by remembering the neglected, lovable child within us Self-care is an attitude, a mindset that allows us to put our own health and happiness first. This doesn't mean that you don't care about your kids or your partner. It means you come first. Adopting this attitude means that once your needs are met, you can do what you need to for others. You can be healthy and whole and ready to happily help those you love. You may not be used to treating yourself well. Let's face it, most women who have been abused haven't learned the art of self-care and don't know where to begin. Start off easily, small if it feels right, or large if that's better. Here are some simple self-care activities. Prioritize your sleep, making sure you get the amount and quality you need. Watch your nutrition. Learn to eat foods that support your health and energy. Take a walk by yourself. Walking is free and one of the best exercises for mental and physical health. Cook your favorite food, not the kids' favorite food, yours. Enjoy it privately.
At the proper temperature.
Yeah. Yeah, not cold, right?
Mama Bear's food is always too
I know.
cold.
Paint your nails, take a warm bath with bubbles, read a book or magazine you love. Are you getting the hang of it? These are the things that require little or no money and will give you pleasure. I'm sure you'll think of many more ways to soothe your soul once you get started. And no feeling guilty. That's in bold. Treat yourself the way you treat your best friend. Be your best friend. Later, when you learn to heal your wounded child within, you can add one step at a time everything else you need to make your life what you deserve it to be.
I love that. Thank you. And my favorite line is from the beginning. Self-care is how I take my power back.
Yeah, it is.
It is, it's true.
Another great quotation, no is a complete sentence.
Love it. So then I'm going to ask you the question in the opposite way that I ask all of my guests. Instead of how are you saying yes to yourself in this season, I'm going to ask what you're saying no to.
I'm at a place in my life where I'm a grandmother of 3. I don't really have to say no to much. I'm very blessed.
You've deliberately created the experience you desire.
I'm very blessed that I've been able to do that. Um, I had to say no to doing more.
Mhm.
And I think that's the hardest thing to say no to because there's another wonderful book by Glennon Doyle called Untamed.
Mhm.
And she says we are tamed at a very early age.
Mhm.
And we need to be cheetahs again.
Yep.
The animal cheetah, not a
Yeah.
cheater, but a cheetah.
Right. Right.
And so
We're from Massachusetts, friends, so you have to you have to really pronounce those R's.
so yeah, I think we need to be more of who we are
Mhm.
and do less for other people. And I've gotten pretty good at doing that. And it's not that I don't love to do things for my 2 daughters and my 3 grandkids. I do, but
Of course.
it becomes a choice, not something that I'm feeling that I'm forced into or shamed or
Obligation.
guilt or,
Mhm.
guilt and shame really do not serve any of us at all.
Nope. No,
So,
they don't. So then what are you saying yes to in this season?
well, I have to tell you,
Tell me.
podcasts, the thought of podcasts were really scary for me because I haven't done this a lot. I
Okay.
do talk a lot, but so saying yes to the podcasts, and I have a wonderful marketing person who actually lives in Germany. And she's like, Joe, come on, you got to do this. My mission is to get the book into as many hands as possible. And I know I'll never make a penny on the book, but I want women who want the book to be able to get the book. So
Sure.
anyway, it took a lot of guts to say yes to the first podcast. And now it's like, I'm really having fun, you know? But I'm going to say yes to more travel.
Good for you.
I want to travel. I'd like to do some volunteer travel. I actually looked at a school volunteer project in Nepal that I'd like to do.
Ooh.
And I'm sure I'm older than most of your listeners. So I got to do this. I can't mess around and say, oh, I'll do this in 10 years because in 10 years, I'm not going to be doing this. So yes, I'm really saying yes to every exciting opportunity and say,
Mm.
whatever the universe has to show me, just show me.
I think that's such a beautiful byproduct of these practices of self-care, because what's happened for me, it's been a way to hone my intuition and to know what in the development of my mantra that I am only available for what delights me, that has caused me to run every opportunity through that filter. And does this delight me or does this not? And what would delight me to cook for dinner? And what would delight me
Yeah, isn't that
to
great?
use the
Yeah,
next 15 minutes? And and of course, I'm a farmer, so I have to do things that might not feel delightful or seem delightful to an outsider all by itself. But if it supports this
right,
dreamy life that I have, then I'm delighted to pull the weeds and transfer the compost and clean out the chicken coop and all of those things.
right.
So that has been just a really beautiful, unexpected blessing of choosing me, because I know now what I want. So when I am presented with a new opportunity, just like you with this teaching opportunity, volunteer travel in Nepal, like you already know that checks all your boxes. That's so great. I love
Right,
that.
right.
And that's a beautiful gift that you are modeling for your grandchildren, for your daughters, and you get to continue to course correct in your parenting, because
Right,
you're always parenting
right.
even though they're not in your home anymore. That's really beautiful. I'm so glad, because that is actually helping me know that, I have a 10-year-old and I'm 55, and that's not normally how it goes, but I'm so grateful because I am supposed to be her mother and I'm supposed to be 55 when she's 10, because I'm making some decisions with her and for her that I don't think I would have been able
Hmm.
to make 25 years ago. I certainly wouldn't have from my mindset where I was then. But it's just beautiful to have the type of relationship that I have with her. I
Yeah.
will
Um,
make a decree, and then sometimes I have to go back and tell her, honey, I've thought about this some more and I know this is what I said, but I'm going to make a correction, and this is the first time I've ever been a mom. So
right,
I'm
right.
figuring it out, and this is the first time you've ever been a kid of me being your mom. So, we're just figuring this out and we're course correcting. And sometimes she'll ask me before I say, when I'll come back in and say, actually, I've changed my mind. You can do this thing. And she'll say, oh, is it because it's your first time? Like, yes, that's why.
Oh,
So
she's got your number.
she does. And, it just helps to put it in that perspective as well, that she's experiencing things
Yeah,
obviously for the
yeah.
first time also, and there's a hormone situation,
Oh,
and
yeah.
fifth grade is coming, and all of these things. And it's just, we are learning and growing together, and we are doing the best we can with the tools we have, but we are adding new fabulous things to our tool case all the time, and we are removing those things that are not serving us any longer.
Right. I wanted to add one thing when you said you
Please.
you depend on your intuition. And I do too. And intuition is a muscle as well.
Yeah.
Um, my brain is old enough that it is totally full of misperceptions, assumptions, expectations, all of
Mhm.
which are not good.
Mhm.
So when I need to make a decision, I don't use my brain. I put it in my tummy, and that's as
Mm.
easy as it is.
Mhm.
And okay, if I want to go to Nepal, oh, it's really expensive to get there. And what is it going to be like when I'm there? And I put that in my tummy. And how does it feel?
Mm.
If there's a little niggle, I don't think so. Or if it feels kind of warm and fuzzy, that's what I go with
Yep.
because, and I mean, it's really a fact. The gut is very smart,
Mhm.
but it is a muscle. And I'm sure you're using your gut a lot, but a lot of listeners may not be. Try it out and see how it works because it really is quite amazing. And it just takes a nanosecond to know what that gut is feeling. It's not, you
Mhm.
don't have to sit and meditate for hours
Right.
under the Bodhi tree. You'll know, and you'll know better next time.
Right. And you can practice exercising that muscle, just like when
Right,
you first start going to the gym, you're not picking up the heavy
right,
weights. So
right.
you can look at a menu, then you can shut your eyes
Yeah,
and ask yourself, what would I like to eat?
right,
And you can ask yourself which direction you want to take to the store this time, or which way you want to go home, or what shoes you want to wear. Just really checking in with yourself as you are making decisions all day long
right.
is a great way to practice listening to yourself. And you can course correct, you can change your mind, you
Absolutely.
can do it over. It's all fine,
Right.
but the result that you are looking for is worth the effort.
Yes. What does little Wendy want to do today?
She wants to talk to new friends, which is what
Yeah,
she's doing.
it's always good.
Yes, it's so great. Thank you so much for your time, Joe. I have loved this conversation. Please tell everybody where they can find the book, where they can follow along on your journey to Nepal or whatever fabulous thing you do next. But tell us where we can find you.
Well, the book you can find anywhere. It Takes a Woman to Empower Women by Johanna Crawford. It's on Apple, it's on Kindle, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, all those places. For Instagram, I don't have these things down pat,
Oh,
but
we can put it in the show notes for you,
okay.
but we can follow you on Instagram.
Anybody that wants to email me,
Mhm.
it is J-O, at ittakesawoman.net.
Love it.
So, and I'd love to hear anybody's comments or ideas or any of that.
Perfect. Now, can you also share? I know your nonprofit is not active any longer, but if somebody is experiencing intimate terrorism and we happen to have the honor of speaking to them in this moment, what would you suggest that they do to take a step to find themselves in a different environment?
Well, there are state domestic violence agencies in every state. I know a lot about Boston and Cambridge because that's where I work. There are wonderful, wonderful domestic violence agencies, and they still call themselves domestic violence agencies. You can Google domestic violence agencies in your area. In our book, at the back of the book, there's a huge resource section. There is free legal care available, there is free education available, and the advocates, even at shelters, do community work. So you don't have to be in the shelter to be able to access advocates. So there is help. Housing is a really tough thing, but I would suggest everybody gets an advocate through a local domestic violence agencies.
Thank you. And I know that's a very sensitive topic. It's scary. It's scary to order a book like that if you're experiencing this, to do a Google search when you're not sure. So if that is you, my sweet listener, you just DM me and I'll order all the books for you and make the calls for you. And I will advocate for you until we find someone far better qualified to do that work. But we see you and we hear you, and we want more for you.
Thank you. For you as well. And I think what you're doing is absolutely wonderful. And enjoy that little girl because they grow up really fast.
I'm going to enjoy her then as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Joe. This has been lovely.
Thank you so much, Wendy.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. As always, any links or notes mentioned can be found at phineaswrighthouse.com in the podcast section of our site or in the show notes below. And if you haven't connected with me personally, come find me on Instagram at Phineas Wright House and let me know you listened to this episode. I'd love to get to know you. Thank you for sharing this time with me. I know your days are full, and I'm really grateful that you chose to spend some of your precious time right here. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of these delightful conversations. I'll see you next week.